escalation clause? What's that? Is that a good thing? Well, with great interest rates and low inventory, we have a home buying environment that might need a little extra creativity to win the home of your dreams. So today we're talking about escalation clauses, the pros and the cons, and it's likely a tool that your grandma never had to worry about using when she was purchasing her real estate, but you might.
So what is an escalation clause in real estate? Don't let the name scare you. An escalation clause is part of the real estate contract that lets a homebuyer specify that they will pay X price, just like normal. But if the seller receives another offer or multiple offers that are higher, they can escalate their price that they're willing to pay for that property to Z price. And that price escalation is an amount that is defined in advance by the buyer. And it is a hard limit and a hard cap that the buyer is 100% in control of when they write that contract. So how does this escalation clause thing work anyway? So the escalation clause can be written in a multitude of ways, and it is a part of the contract that has some variability, but there are three basic numbers that are outlined in an escalation clause. The first one is, what is that original purchase price that you're willing to pay for a property? Duh, just like any other real estate transaction. And the next number is, to what degree are you willing to incrementally escalate or elevate your price for that property? In what increments? And then the third number is, what is that cap? What is that maximum amount that you have deemed that this property is worth, or that your budget says you can afford? What is that maximum amount? Those three numbers are outlined as part of your escalation clause. So how does this work? So if I have buyer A and they come to me and they say that they want to pay $300,000 for this property, fantastic. But we know it's going to be a crazy competitive seller's market, and we're for sure anticipating multiple offers on this property. We might consider an escalation clause, and we talk about it, and the buyer considers escalating their price by $1,000 above any other competitive offer that comes in to a cap of $310,000. That's what they think that this property is worth. They've sat down and we've analyzed what the real value of this property might be worth and what their budget says they can afford. And so those are the numbers that we outline in the escalation clause. Fantastic, right? Everything's fine until we see the multiple offers, and let's see how this plays out. So buyer B comes in, and buyer B has offered, instead of our $300,000, they have offered $304,000. But with our escalation clause, automatically our bid is escalated by $1,000 because that's what we've written in our escalation clause. So our offer now automatically becomes $305,000, and we would be back in the highest bid category, and we would win this property at that price. We're still under our $310,000 max that we have outlined. But if buyer C swoops in and they offer $312,000 for this property, my buyer, buyer A, has outlined already that they were willing to cap out at $310,000. They were not willing to go any higher than that. So buyer C, this competitive offer, would win that bid at $312,000. That's how an example of how an escalation clause plays out in real life. Let's talk about the pros and cons now of using the escalation clause. The pro is very obvious. It helps buyers to be more competitive in today's wackadoodle environment that we have in real estate. And there are some cons too. The sellers might just say, I'm not accepting any escalation clause offers. I would prefer that I want to look at the highest and best offers, clean offers, no variability in the offers that I see. And I might also want to see it by Tuesday at 5 p.m. So there might be a time and a date deadline that I want to see that highest and best, in which case escalation clauses might not be applicable. You might have to use other tools to be more competitive. But here is the biggest con that every buyer should be aware of when using something like an escalation clause. You should only use it when you are fairly confident that there are going to be multiple offers and when the buyer expects that probably we're going to go over that list price on a property. And here is why. Buyers who submit an escalation clause are basically laying out their cards. They're laying the cards on the table for what they are willing, the maximum amount that they're willing to pay for a property. So if they end up being the only offer on that property, you can see that it would be smart for sellers just to counter offer back what that highest amount that buyer has already outlined in an escalation clause. Why wouldn't they? So the buyer does give away some of their negotiation power when they use an escalation clause because they're revealing that cap amount. Now, even when a seller comes back with a counter offer at that higher amount, doesn't mean that the buyer needs to accept it. They can still walk away and say, no, I don't want to. But the negotiation changes when the seller has more information about the cap amount that a buyer is willing to pay. If you're having a blast watching real estate investment videos, here's some more queued up for you right here. And if you want a property through a specific real estate negotiation strategy, share it with us in the comments below.